Hey, podcasters. The phone number to reach us is 866-594-4150. We record the show from 9 to 11 every Thursday morning Central Time. Or if you can't call us, maybe we can call you. Just email us your phone number and your question, and we would love to try and get in touch with you while we're recording the show every Thursday morning. Just go to the website, underthehoodshow.com, and click on the contact page. The Under the Hood Show podcast is brought to you by Berkeley Classics, a premier provider of collector vehicle insurance.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls. That's my job. 866-594-4150. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by HollanderParts.com. Looking for a quality auto recycler in your area to keep you going and save some green? Visit HollanderParts.com. And by Stant Corporation, makers of the Superstat. Reach for the thermostat professional installers prefer. Learn more about the Superstat and Stant's entire collection of aftermarket caps and thermostats at Stant.com. 866-594-4150. And I, today, have done my job spectacularly well because we have a guest on the phone, Russ.
You did.
On Skype, actually. I went one step further.
We have a good friend of the show, Haroon, who is joining us live from Australia this morning. Good morning.
Good mornings and greetings from down under.
And I say good morning because it is quite early for you, isn't it? Or
it's
late?
About 10. Well, no, it's early. I guess it's about 10 past midnight.
Okay.
That's we thank you very much for staying up and joining us on Under the Hood.
Oh well, I have a bit of an issue with insomnia, so I'm often working and doing things while the rest of the world is sensibly sleeping. So.
Things like staying up after midnight to listen to Under the Hood and things like that.
Oh, totally.
That's not senseless. That's very smart.
I must thank you guys because, I've been in the game myself, since basically I was 3 years old. My father was an engineer with Mercedes in Germany before he came to Australia. And he was one of these people that was one with the machine, and I wanted to be just like him. So by the age of 10, when I was a kid, I decided one afternoon to see what would happen from filling up his petrol tank on his Chevy Impala with the garden hose.
Oh, yeah.
And so after the hiding that I got for doing it, I spent the next 6 weeks totally dismantling everything from the engine bay and putting it all back together again under his guidance.
That is a good lesson. That's a good lesson to...
we have
not instigate.
Many references to garden hoses on this show, and this would be just another one.
Yeah. And so, once I had this, suddenly I understood exactly what happened from the point, from the petrol tank to the tailpipe. Well, we call it petrol over here. I should say gas tank, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
I love it.
Our listeners around the world they'll appreciate that.
And you guys drive on the wrong side of the road too, don't you?
We do. So you've been working on cars pretty much your whole life, then, haven't you?
Correct. Yeah. And I had I actually specialised in engine tuning and electronic engine management and fitting all sorts of things to rally cars and all that kind of stuff for about 20 years. And I managed my own repair workshop. which was interesting because, I'd have people coming to me and they'd say to me things like, well, how do you repair a vehicle when you're totally blind? And, my answer was, well, I just see differently to you, and I hold tools in my hand the same way you do, and I have the same understanding. In some cases, being blind was an advantage because I didn't have any distraction, and I was very, very good at diagnosis. In fact, people will bring things to me that, guys can't get started or they have a noise that they can't identify, and I just have to go maybe 100 feet, for a bit of a ride, and I'm pretty much onto it.
We have a lot of our listeners and Facebookers and everything that contact us because they're metaphorically blind to what happens with their car. So
everybody.
This is for the people listening. You are physically blind, and this is just amazing to me. This is it's a miracle, and it's awesome. It's just amazing to me.
Well, I knew at some point, Haroon, that we had to get you actually on the air. There was a station of ours in Sweetwater, Texas, who emailed to me and said that we have a young man at the time who was about in first grade, and this was several years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, I let you know about that, and he was so inspired after I read an email, the first email you sent to me, and I read that email, and you were talking about a car, and then you finished it up and said, oh, by the way, I'm completely blind, and I have been, forever, and I do this, and I was floored because to me it was another email coming in. I was reading and I was answering it to the best of my ability, and all of a sudden I went, whoa, and it's like when you see a movie and they wrap it all up at the end where the whole thing that you just watched for 2 hours made perfect sense in the last 10 seconds of the movie when you find out something about the character, and all of a sudden I was floored. I was amazed, and from that point on I said, you know what? On those days that I think working on something is too hard, or I've had a little, I'm just not figuring something out, I think back and I say, well, if Haroon can do it, I can figure it out.
Well, here's what I tell people. Many times I have people that come to me and they say things like, oh, goodness, I can see and I could never do those things. And I say, anybody, like I'm no better or more special than the person standing next to me. I simply don't have in my vocabulary the word can't. And I believe that the only thing that stops us from being able to achieve anything we desire is our belief in ourselves to be able to accomplish it. And, if you believe you can do something, you can do it.
Move a mountain.
Even you, Chris. Yeah. So on that note, I want to hear Chris do an Australian accent.
Oh,
what you got, Chris?
All I have is good day. Didn't we discuss that recently?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. A question I have for you is when you started working on cars, and there's all kinds of different makes and models that come out. You talked about the rally cars and the different things. You guys have got the Holdens down there with the V8s and all kinds of things going on. When you approach a vehicle, that would be, for me, the most difficult thing is to figure out the layout of the vehicle. I can see where you have a sense for the noises and you have a sense for how things are put together. You could feel your way through things, but just getting familiar with the type of vehicle, is that just the research that you do to know what's out there? Or how do you bridge that gap to know, is this a front-wheel drive? Is this a rear-wheel drive? Is it a rear engine, front engine?
I listened to the Under the Hood radio
I love
show.
that answer. Ba-da-boom. That was not a setup.
I do a lot of reading. I used to, in my days when I wasn't so, when I didn't have so much humility, and I believed that manuals were only written for the benefit of other people. Then I discovered that, reading the manual is actually a really, really good thing to do, because I've learned that I didn't have to. I learned, one day I had to do a rear main seal on a V6 Camry. And when you don't know the sequence of events to take things apart, it can be a terrible job. And you can, undo bolts and undo components in the wrong sequence, and then you can get yourself all jammed up, and you can't move the transmission and you can't move the engine and all this kind of stuff, and you break all the front plastic off the front of the engine bay because you're trying to move something that shouldn't be moved. And then I decided, well, gee, I could have saved myself a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time by reading the workshop manual. So, and the other thing that I do is, essentially, a lot of things here, I mean, you guys have a lot more vehicles than what we do, from what I understand. You've got some really cool cars over there. We basically have about 4 or 5 cars and a whole bunch of things that are just made by one manufacturer and rebadged, for a particular vehicle brand. So, for example, you've got Mazda that make vehicles for 4 or 5 different, we've got Mazdas with Holden badges on them and Ford badges. But essentially, the engine bay, apart from things are going to be in a slightly different order in relationship to each other, the principle is the same. And so, before I have the engine running or, stick my hands in a fan, which I accidentally did one day, on a Renault because, the alternator was right at the top of the engine, and I reached into the engine bay and touched the belt. So I thought, I've got all my 10 fingers and all my toes and everything else. So it's just a matter of being cautious. And I have a very good memory of placement of where things are. Once I've investigated the engine bay, I'll remember from that time forth where things are. I can go back to that vehicle 5-6 years later and still remember where everything is.
That's what I was going to ask you about the fan, and I would imagine that the heat is the other thing that would be an issue.
Heat, you can feel heat.
Yeah.
You kind of know where not to put your hands. You know what I mean? Like you know that the accessory belt is at the front of the engine, and if you go sticking your hands down there, then that's a really bad career move when it's running. So it took me a while. Actually, the thing that took me a little while to teach myself was installing a Serpentine belt, because they run all over the place.
Yeah.
I took one off, and then when I tried to put one on, I think, gee, this is about a foot longer than what it should be.
I'm missing something here.
I run into that all the time with those things.
Yeah, but now it's a bit like the more often that you do something, the more pathways your brain lays down for it, and you think less about it, and it becomes more effective autopilot.
I'm thinking right now, I've got to.
How do you ever get into a situation, Russ, when you're working on something purely by hand because you can't see where you're putting a socket?
And what I do is I like when I'm up under a dash and I put my hands up there and I know what it is supposed to look like because I've seen the dash out, but I'm picturing in my head, and sometimes I'll close my eyes and I'll be reaching up there and thinking, okay, it's right here. It looks about like this, and this is where it goes. But I'm thinking now, after speaking to you, this is a whole different world for me. I think I want to put a blindfold on and open the hood of a vehicle. I'll even cheat. I'll lay my tools out first, but I've got to put an alternator on my wife's Yukon, and I'm thinking I want to put a blindfold on and see if I can find the vehicle in the shop, open the hood, and change that alternator, something I've done at least 100 times in my life on that 5.3 engine. So
but you know where the alternator is, like if you're picturing it in your head, right?
Exactly, and that's
exactly
cheating.
Where it is.
I don't know if I could actually do it correctly, even having done it so many times.
Have your wife videotape you?
I don't. Yeah, Haroon would get a laugh out of that, but
yeah.
I don't know. And we describe it to you, of course, how bad I failed, but I don't know how. I don't know. I don't know if I could do it. I guess I'd have to do like you and say, you know what, I can do it. But
see, Russ, the thing is, I've been this way all my life. I don't know any different other than being the way that I am now. And being blind is simply just a way of seeing differently to other people, because it's very, very much different when you've had sight and then lost it later on in life, because you're then having to deal with a deficit.
Right.
Whereas, if I suddenly were to get my eyesight back, I wouldn't know even what it was, let alone what things looked like. I have no concept of colour or, what people look like or anything like that. It's just just doesn't exist for me.
I have lots of hair.
I read a story about tall. Okay, Shane. I read a story about a gentleman who had been blind his entire life, and in his mid-30s, something had happened where he regained his sight for a short period. And it was just devastating because
that exact thing happened to a friend of mine. He was totally blind all his life, and at 51 years of age, because of a domestic between he and his wife, where she'd hit him on the top of the head with a cast iron fry pan, and he went from totally blind, something that eye surgeons couldn't do, but she managed to do with this fry pan, and he went from totally blind to 20/20 vision. And 3 months later, he died from fright.
I can imagine.
Because because once the brain learns something scary, you can't unlearn it.
Yeah.
Even taking the sight away, the brain would never forget the experience.
Wow.
Because you learn all that, your brain wires itself up, from in your first 5 years. Your visual cortex is, programmed to process vision and all that kind of stuff. And, so now at my age, if I was to suddenly, go through some operation that would restore eyesight, I think my curiosity might be interested, but the reality is that it would probably limit my functions in big ways. So, I'm a big supporter of autonomous vehicles because I know what it'll do for me.
Oh, yeah. I had never thought about that.
It'll mean, independence at long last. I mean, to be able to take a car down to its last nut and bolt and put it back together and not driving it is sometimes like having that piece of chocolate that you could never eat.
Wow.
You've driven a car, though, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, I've driven. The problem is
with somebody else in the car.
Someone with nerves of steel sitting beside me.
Yeah, there was a gentleman
and someone who doesn't confuse their left and rights.
When I lived back in Longview, Texas, we had a gentleman who was blinded in the war, in the Vietnam War. His name was Mike. I don't remember his last name for anything, but he couldn't see at all, and he just desperately wanted to drive. And I remember the day a couple of his buddies came back, and I rode with them, and they got in the car, and they said, "All right, Mike, you're driving." And he's like, "All right, let's go." And I thought, he's blind. What do you mean he's going to drive? And they took off around the neighborhood, and it was a loop in the neighborhood. It was all a closed area, and they said, "All right, go left. Oh, you're going to hit the curve. You want to go the other way." And then they were just so calm about it, like they'd done it 100 times before. And we're cruising around the neighborhood, 40 miles an hour, and he was doing it.
I've done that with a friend, doing 60, 70 miles per hour on a main highway with, cars driving all around me. And one day we actually got pulled up for a random breath test, and the cop didn't even know that I was blind.
All right,
I just drive like everyone else on the road with my eyes shut.
Yeah, or the people that are, at least you're paying attention and listening for things coming on, and the other people texting, they're not quite so.
All right, Shannon, let me ask you a question. I have a question for Shannon. Let's take Russ and Haroon out of this for a second, because they both perceive things differently.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's me.
Think about this for a minute now, Shannon. When you're working on a car, other than simply putting the tool on the part that you want to tighten or loosen, okay? How much of your sight do you use when you are working on a car, other than to get to do the maneuver? I mean, when you're reaching, you reach, but you could do that by hand. How much? I mean, I assume like fixing a timing belt, I would imagine, would be visual if you're trying to line up. I'm picturing the strobe and lining up. What else would be? No, you say no on that.
Not for me.
Okay, you just listen.
I feel, and I use a screwdriver or
for finding top dead center in the cylinder.
To top dead center,
so he feels out when it comes out to its full extent.
Most times you can feel the timing mark because it's a little notch or a pointer or something. But I tend to not worry about the marks. I just do it by feeling the camshaft and feeling top dead center, because more often than not, I found timing marks to be incorrect.
He should have worked on our 306 cylinder.
We just found that on a Ford recently. We put it together the way the marks showed, and it was wrong, way wrong, and it had to be lined up with a screwdriver and a cylinder.
To answer your question, Chris,
this Corolla that I've been working on that I told you about, Russ, it was like it's been a tooth out almost from the day it was manufactured.
Yeah.
back to Chris's question to me, when I'm doing things, it depends on what I do. A lot. I probably do more interior work over the years anymore. Just working on airbags and taking components in and out. I don't get into as hardcore stuff as I ever once did when I was younger. But a lot of what you do, I can only do it because I've seen it before. Now, once you do get on the bolt or the nut or the screw and you start working under dash, especially like Russ said, you are doing it literally blind sometimes.
I don't look. Once I start turning something,
it's kind of like
attention.
that sense you have when you're trying to put a hole through something and you'll put your finger on the back side and your finger on the front side, and you sort of know that you're in the right place.
Right.
There is a feel for it, and I would assume that would be just amazing if that's what you did your whole life. That you really, it
would really just be a normal.
It'd be a normal sensation, I would guess. Just no different than watching people that have adapted to other.
It's just that my hands, my my ears do a lot of
get scars like
what
this
a
on your
person's
finger
eyes
from
would do, for example.
Putting your finger behind something when you run a screw in it. I was just showing Shannon.
Yeah, I thought you were flipping me off. Russ is giving me the bird all of a sudden here in the studio.
Look at that,
yeah, I had my hand on the back of a 2x4 and that
you
don't
can display that middle finger straight as can be. That is the straightest middle finger. Look
don't
at that.
drill with that.
You
don't recommend that, do you, Haroon? Now, let me ask you this. So you say you've reached in once and gotten bit by a fan.
Yes.
Which is, how many times have you?
I've done it a dozen times while I'm looking at it.
Well, yeah. And I wonder if that really, I was thinking about that because
I'm not cautious.
And you think you're farther than you are. You're
fine.
Perceiving with your vision wrongly.
Exactly.
Well, what had happened actually was this, it was about a 1980-something Renault, and the engine bay, the French build some really unusual vehicles, and this was the unusual of the unusual. The alternator was mounted right on top of the engine. And so you had the belt, running, this long belt running down the front of the engine, and the cowls were missing. And I had to adjust the mixture on the carburetor, and there was only about a knuckle space between the mixture screw on the front of the carburetor and the fan, which had no guard behind it. So when I put my hand down there with a screwdriver, my knuckle hit the back of the, the inside of the fan while it was running. But nowadays, the fans are all electric and, well hidden, and, you have to work pretty hard to touch them.
Mm-hmm.
And like even somebody was asking me how I deal with the OBD2 information. Well, I actually bought a UScan module that I plug into the OBD2 connector, and I've written an application on my iPhone that speaks all of the data to me.
Do you have a torque wrench that talks to you, or do you feel on all your torque specs?
I have one that I can set. It's got, it's like a micrometer thing that I can, count in.
Sure.
I tend to you get used to the torque by feel as well. But, I like to be as exact as I can. So basically the one that I have clicks, or it just doesn't allow you to go any further than, the setting that you've dialed in.
Well, Haroon, we have enjoyed this immensely. Thanks for staying up.
As have I. Thank you.
Joining us. And if you follow us on Facebook, you'll see Haroon pop up every now and then, make a comment.
Yeah.
We're up against the break here, but we really enjoyed this, Haroon, and thank you very much for listening, and thank you for being on the Under the Hood Show.
Oh, and thank you for providing a wonderful and very useful show.
Well, thank you. When I get down there sometime, we'd love to come see you. And
let's do the show from Australia.
Yeah, I always wonder if they call it the Down Under the Hood Show.
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics. The Under the Hood Show can be heard each week on great stations across the country and at underthehoodshow.com.
Let's talk parts. Quality recycled parts. You've heard me say many times on this show, find a quality auto recycler in your area. But where? Go to HollanderParts.com, and that's where you'll find them. Recycled auto parts are a great way to save money, protect the environment, and keep all your vehicles on the road and looking great without breaking the bank. HollanderParts.com. You can choose from thousands of quality auto parts available from great vendors that will save you a ton of money and keep you and your car happy. Quality recycled parts are guaranteed, cost less, and keep your vehicle in tip-top shape. Go to HollanderParts.com today to find a vendor who has what you need. Reduce, reuse, recycle. It's green, and it saves you green.
Helping you make your car run good. This is Under the Hood with the Motor Medics.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. We're glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us Under the Hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. Again, we want to thank our guest from the last segment, Haroon from Australia. You don't seem so cool now, Russ.
No.
Haroon makes you seem way less cool.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Mm-hmm. I would say that Haroon is one of the neatest people I've talked to in a long time. Just
Absolutely.
understanding the rest of the story. It's awesome.
All right, let's go to Facebook. We talked a little bit about Facebook during that segment. When you go to Facebook, the Under the Hood Show, you can win a hoodie. All you have to do is like the Facebook page and be a Hoodie Fan Club member. Who's our winner this hour, Russ?
Well, our winner this hour is Rick Campbell, who listens to us on KWUF in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And like we mentioned before, there will be a second winner now, one per hour of Under the Hood. So you have to stick around and find out who that is. Of course, the hoodie giveaway is sponsored by our good friends over there at HollanderParts.com.
The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Berkeley Classics, a premier provider of collector vehicle insurance committed to helping you understand the risks to your collector vehicle, both on and off the road, so you're better prepared to protect it. Berkeley Classics, your key to collector vehicle insurance. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Mike. Mike, welcome to the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
I'm driving taxi cab, and so we up to 131,000 miles on this Dodge Caravan. 2009 is a year. I start noticing a little noise and humming, like as you pick up speed, it increases, and as you slow down, it decreases. Is that something giving us a warning noise, transmission, or it's not CV joint?
Well, try this. When you're driving on the road and you hear that noise start to increase and you start going, like let's say you go to the left and then go to the right, and make sure there's nobody around you, but kind of sway it left and then sway it right. When
doesn't change any.
Doesn't change a bit?
No.
Okay, if it doesn't change a bit, but the noise sounds like a wheel bearing type noise, it increases as you speed up and slows down. A lot of those in that type of vehicle was in the differential itself. Now, it doesn't mean that it's junk or it's going to fail today, but it does mean there's some wear in there. You should have a mechanic actually ride in it and listen and say, yeah, I think you could get by for a while. It's just getting some miles up on her and it'll be all right. But if he says, woo, that's not a wheel bearing, it's in the differential, I'm
company
afraid.
Vehicle, company driver.
Yeah.
I can have the company mechanic kind of listen to it. Is there an additive or something like I can put in that differential?
Not to help if it's the bearings going, the ring and pinion, no. There's nothing you can do other than make sure it stays full of fluid and the fluid is clean, because that type of noise that you get from a ring and pinion in there is not something you can take care of. But it's not if that's what it is, it's not a noise that will take it out. But you're getting up there on the miles on those.
Yeah, taxi cabs, they get really hard.
Oh yeah, and some of them last longer because they put them on. They're driven so much that they are able to burn all the moisture out of the fluids. They get good and warm, and it protects them longer.
Well, thanks for calling into the Under the Hood Show. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
866-594-4150. What's caught your attention in the automotive world?
You know, one of the official news information sources that we often look to is automotive news. And my mom still takes at our office, and she goes through all the mail. We get a ton of mail. And my life is crazy busy with the things we have going on with our main business, which is the automotive recycling business. And she often highlights interesting things to her. Mm-hmm. And so laying right on top of my stack this morning, I grabbed it, was this article that talks about, we get pretty excited about how bad cars are as polluters. And, the diesels, they've changed all the emission regulations.
The EPA does
so,
anyways.
And they're like, wow, these things are just terrible. We can't have all this pollution. So they've got a story in here about the Harmony of the Seas, a big ship, and the amount of pollution that it does. And it says here that, I'm just going to read a few excerpts from this column here.
ones from the
It says,
I know who that
it says, take the Harmony
to.
of the Sea, the new Royal Caribbean-owned vessel, touted as the world's largest cruise ship. It's powered by two 4-story high. Okay, so 40 feet high.
Okay.
Two 4-story high, 16-cylinder Wärtsilä diesel engines. At full power, they could each burn 1,377 gallons of fuel per hour, or the equivalent of 66,000 gallons per day. Ships use inexpensive byproducts of crude oil that's left over after distillation, says James Corbett, professional of marine policy at the University of Delaware in Newark, Delaware. The fuel contains metals and other carbon contamination refined out of the gasoline.
Okay.
It would never run in your
The low-grade bunker fuel is very high in sulfur. If you calculate the amount of sulfur emitted by a very large cruise ship, it's about 35,000 parts per million, compared to 10 to 15 parts per million for with gasoline.
Huh.
Corbin says, so sulfur emissions from a few ships is equal to a lot of cars. They didn't get it. Corbett says new ships are running cleaner at about 25,000 parts per million and as low as 5,000 parts per million in regulated areas. And so then it goes on to talk a little bit further, and it says that Daniel Berger, a transport officer from the German environmental group NABU, told The Guardian one cruise ship emits as many air pollutants as 5 million cars going the same distance because these ships use heavy fuel that on land would have to be disposed of as hazardous waste.
Interesting.
This is just really was intriguing to me. It says a single large cruise ship will emit nearly 6 tons of oxides of nitrogen, NOx, emissions, and about a half ton of ultrafine particles per day. These ships burn as much fuel as entire towns. They use a lot more power than container ships, and even when they burn low sulfur fuel, it's 100 times worse than road diesel.
That's interesting. Now, could I counterpoint that by saying, yeah, but they're getting rid of what would normally be waste? No, because we're burning it, right?
So,
by the way, let me cross the cruise ship industry off our potential sponsor list.
Yeah, so that is a goodbye Disney cruise, Chris.
Yeah, I guess we're not going to be
We're not going to be using their radio studio. They have got a fine radio studio in that Disney dream. Oh.
Yeah, let's just say that's just that one ship.
Yeah,
any other ship we could do the show from without any conflict.
Yeah, this is a modern ship.
Well, there are a few diesel-powered ships out there that run on biodiesel, but we're talking a scant few, very few. Most of them are going to run like that because of the cost. And a lot of them, there are quite a few out there that run on steam power, and they boil that water and create the steam using biodiesel, and they try to come up with, or natural gas. I mean, there's a lot of different ways they can do it, but for the most part, to operate a cruise line, look at your price of your tickets. A lot of those cruises, $500-600 for a 3 to 7 day cruise, all you can eat, everything inclusive.
I'd like to know what the emissions are off of that ship from the deck.
No kidding. But can you imagine what you'd have to put into, how much money it would cost if you were fueling 66,000 gallons a day of regular, out the pump, $2, $3, $4 diesel fuel? And you're looking at aircraft at around $4 a gallon to run that, basically a diesel fuel, that Jet A. I mean, that's all. It burns a little cleaner, but boy,
what's a 40-foot engine look like?
They're huge.
I would be that. I'm just picturing the engine from Titanic with the guy shoveling the coal in him.
Well, that was big. That was ginormous. I would give anything to be able to stand in the engine room of the Titanic and watch that thing. That thing was many stories high.
I would like to get.
Monster.
I never did the tour when I went on a cruise once, and we could have done the tour.
They don't allow those anymore. When I was on that Disney boat, you remember I told you about.
You wanted to see the engine room?
I wanted to see the engine room, and they just kind of looked at me. And when I actually got to talk to the purser on board.
You've seen that look before, though.
Yeah, and I have many times. But I talked to them and told them what I did and the whole thing, and they said, you know what, it's actually against the rules of the Disney Corporation to let anybody into any sensitive areas of the ship. And they even changed their policy. They used to, first they let people do it, and then they said, well, we're only going to do it if you get pre-qualified before you're on the cruise to do it, and then they cut it off completely. And the only way you're going to do it is if you're some kind of dignitary and you get on board, like if you were the president and you got on board and the captain said, hey, yeah, I'll take you down there. Other than that, it's not. It's just.
I don't suppose we'd see
happen.
the control center of Expedition Everest either. Probably.
Have you tried a lanyard? Because if you wear a lanyard,
they'll
just sometimes let you in. Yeah, that's the secret
guest
there.
Pass. I just have to put a uniform on that said mechanic.
There you go. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics. The Under the Hood Show can be heard each week on great stations across the country and at underthehoodshow.com. And check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/underthehoodshow.
At Wix Filters, we aren't the only ones who love engines. Just ask driver Ryan Newman about his favorite engine.
The nicest car I got, hands down, would be this 49 Buick Roadmaster convertible. It's one of the 4 cars used in making the movie Rain Man, and is absolutely perfect. It's one of those restored nicer than original condition type cars.
Vehicles like that are why we build Wix Filters to be the best in the world.
From my lawnmowers to my snowmobiles to my old cars, my personal vehicles, and especially my race car, I've always trusted Wix Filters.
Do you pamper your collector vehicle and want to protect it at every turn? Berkeley Classics, a premier provider of collector vehicle insurance, shares your concern to keep your most prized possession safe. Weather wreaks havoc on millions of vehicles every year. Even the sun can cause fading and rust, weakening the vehicle's body over time. Keep these storage tips from Berkeley Classics in mind to help avoid common mishaps and keep your vehicle in tip-top shape. Cover your vehicle with a weatherproof, breathable cloth cover, not plastic, which can trap moisture. Store your vehicle in an insulated garage to protect it from the elements. Place the vehicle on jack stands to avoid tire flat spots and add longevity to the suspension. Berkeley Classics is committed to helping you understand the risks and know how to guard against them. Products and services are provided by one or more insurance company subsidiaries of W.R. Berkeley Corporation. Berkeley Classics understands that classic vehicles represent our dreams. They fill our greatest memories, but most of all, they tell a story. And when protected by the right team of people, they'll allow your story to live on for generations. Let Berkeley Classics keep your passion alive. Berkeley Classics, your key to collector vehicle insurance.
I want to tell you about something I'm very passionate about and can save you a ton of money. Money-saving recycled auto parts at HollanderParts.com. Go to HollanderParts.com to find great deals on the recycled parts you need from the best vendors in the business. When we say call a quality auto recycler near you, this is what we're talking about. Recycled auto parts are a great way to save money, protect the environment, and keep all your vehicles on the road and looking great without breaking the bank. You can find thousands of tested and inspected recycled parts, and it's just a click away at HollanderParts.com. Once there, you can search for the parts you need and get your vehicle in top shape at a great price. Compare thousands of parts from many vendors and choose the one that's right from you. HollanderParts.com. Reduce, reuse, recycle. It's green, and it saves you green.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. We're glad to have you with us. Russ Evans, Shannon Nordstrom here to answer your questions. I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. You can call that number 24 hours a day. We call it the Hoodie Hotline.
Hi, this is Steve Cromer calling from York, Pennsylvania. I have a 69 Chevelle with a supercharged 400 small block in it.
Cool.
Yes.
And I want to know the proper way to mount the battery in the trunk, run the alternator, your wiring, and that type of thing. It's already there. It's just sometimes it just seems so hard to turn over. Aftermarket starter, aftermarket alternator. Thank you.
That is just cool. I can picture that car. It sounds awesome. Just stand on the gas really hard, and if it hooks up good, I got a suspicion everything in the front's going to end up in the back.
You put your battery in the trunk just under acceleration.
Put it on the dash, and there it goes. Yeah. The key point of that battery installation is going to be two parts. One, properly mounting the thing. You want it secure in the trunk, and a lot of times if you're putting it inside the vehicle in the compartment there and not under the hood, you want to have it vented to the outside. So they do have vented batteries to vent to the outside, or otherwise a battery like an Optima that's got a gel battery that's AGM battery, so you've got no ventilate. Don't have to worry about acid spillage, which would damage the car, and also the fumes and things like that. So you'd want to vent it outside if you don't have a battery that's sealed like that. And then, proper mounting to the floor so it doesn't go anywhere. And once you have that done, proper size cables. It's more than just running a good size battery cable from the rear to the front of the car to the position where the battery was before. So before, your cable went from the positive of the battery down to the positive on the starter post. Well, now you're going to run from that starter post to the battery in the trunk. So not much different there. And your alternator was already run down to that system. So it should give you all the power you need there as far as the connections. But your ground, a lot of people will bolt that ground in the back to the body, which you can't do by itself. Or they'll bolt it to the frame in the back, and they won't get a good connection between the frame and the rear and in the front. So if you're going to use the frame as a ground, you've got to make sure that the frame is solid and uninterrupted from the rear to the front. No bolting together if you've got any kind of breaks in the frame where you've put a 4-link under it or something like that. It's got to be solid, and it's got to be clean, no paint on that ground, and a proper size battery cable, and then a ground from that frame to the engine. And then you're also going to need a body ground from that battery to the body in the rear, and a body ground in the front from wherever you grounded that, like the frame up to the fender, to make sure you get all your grounds good. Because what can happen is if you don't get a good ground, you may crank the vehicle, but it may not charge. You may not get the proper feedback for the alternator and your gauges and everything to run like it's supposed to. So you want to make sure that is well grounded. And a lot of people just run a positive and a negative from the rear all the way to the front. And if you've got sufficient size battery cables, just picture this to make it easy in your head. Think of your battery in the front now. Unbolt that battery and start walking away from the car with it. Well, it's not going to go very far because your cables are too short. Now just imagine that you've made the battery cables much larger gauge, much larger diameter, and you've made them longer so you can keep walking away from the car and those cables just keep getting longer, and then you put it in the trunk. So you're keeping everything right where it was, but you're extending it to go in the trunk. If you were to take the cable off and bolt one to the frame up front for a ground and one to the frame in the back, now you've broken that, which is fine if you've got a good connection in between. But if that frame has got a weak spot in it somewhere and you're not getting a connection, or you've cut the rear section off and you've put in a 4-link or something like that, and you've broken that where the body's trying to ground, now you've got to ground through all the grommets in the body and stuff. And you have a lot of people that will have a cranking issue. Now, your cranking issue may be separate. When you crank it and you're saying it cranks slow in that, with the headers and the heat, it can build up and cause that starter to bind as the bearings get hot and things like that, and they build up resistance as they get hotter as well. So you may, even if you had your battery in the front, it may not. You may have found that it wouldn't crank well, and you may need to go with a high torque starter that's shielded from the heat, or a gear reduction starter.
What's the benefit of moving it if all that headache has to be taken care of?
Weight transfer.
That's it?
You got a car like that.
Is that a huge...
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's going to clean up under the hood, and you want that weight transfer to the back, because when you step on that throttle, you want the weight to transfer from the front to the rear and plant those tires as hard as you can. And if you've got a battery that is if you've got a driver on the driver's side front, and you've got a battery that's up there, you want to have equal weight on the rear and as much of it as possible. So if you can get that, that's why you set that car up just right. When you take off, you want the center of gravity and all that weight to transfer towards the rear of the car and plant that. If you had more weight in the front than the rear, well, your tires are just going to spin like you're on ice.
And a lot of times when you're putting accessories under the hood, like if he's added on a belt-driven supercharger, it could be a clearance issue. You may not have the room in the engine bay. Now, in a car of that age, you should be plenty of room, but it can clean up the engine bay and make it look so much nicer just to have, they'll paint and polish everything under the hood, and if you can just get the battery out of sight, it helps a lot.
We were looking recently under the hood of cars. It is remarkable the difference between a 2015 and a 75. I mean,
it's changed, hasn't it?
The stuff that is crammed in now in a car in that space it's almost unrecognizable.
And they design it to look finished.
Right.
Right. If they've got covers that are designed to make everything look finished and complete, as if there may not even be an engine in there.
That wasn't the case back in the...
Before it was like, I want to see it.
When you could kind of stand, you could climb in and get your feet down to get a... That doesn't happen now. It's a little different.
And so many things have changed over the years. I see these cars that are good friends over at Berkeley Classics post on their website, and we repost quite a few of them up to our Facebook page as their insured cars and trucks and motorcycles, all sorts of stuff, even a tank now and then. Going back home on a recent trip to my hometown in Texas, I looked around at cars just to see what might be, what's on the road today. And it's not that dissimilar to what we have here in our area. Look around and you see cars 10 years old or newer is pretty typical running around. When I left, there were probably 10 years old or newer running around. But at that time, we're talking about in the 80s. But when you look a little deeper, things you see that are completely different that makes me appreciate the classic car business and Berkeley Classics. I went into a friend of mine's shop, and there sat a older Blazer, 2-wheel drive. Everything we see here is a 4-wheel drive. It was an S-Series Blazer, but it was mint body-wise. It could have passed for 3-4 years old here because there was zero rust anywhere. You just don't get it. There was a square body 1982 Chevy truck out in the parking lot that is stored outside all the time. It's getting a hot rod engine in it. And it was just your average old beater. He says, hey, picked it up for $800. I'm like, oh, I've never seen one with cab corners in it since the 80s, since I left here. Look at that. Lots of cool stuff like that. Around here, you'll look and you'll see people bring these beautiful cars out in the summer to drive them. Well, down there, they're sitting in the trees or they're in the driveway, and a lot of people still drive. There's some stuff that you don't see as a daily driver here that you will see in Florida, Texas, Arizona, things like 1975 Toyota Corolla. Mm-hmm. You can still buy parts for those, and you can still fix the engines, and why not? They're cheap to fix, and if you've got an old car like that and it has zero rust on it and the body's still good, hey, if you're a mechanic and you want to rebuild one of those engines, and some of them have just been running the whole time, and they just keep going, and it's neat to see that.
Think the number of our listeners that have to go to the internet to look at a picture or feel what rust is because they've just not seen it.
Yeah. And now
it's so normal to us.
We've got listeners like you've heard in other other sections of our show, and you've heard people from Australia, from Ireland, from England. They're all over. So we have a wide variety, so people can appreciate our listeners up in Alaska. And from what I've heard, some of our listeners that have emailed us from Alaska, they're like, "Oh yeah, we don't get that much rust because." We've never seen a salt truck before or a sand truck. We just
learn to drive on it.
We just drive in 3 feet of snow. Be an ice road
trucker. Come on.
Yeah, it just packs down and you drive on it. What we have is the corrosion accelerators. They throw the salt and the sand on the road, and it just eats away everything. But if you're in an area that doesn't do those roads, I know it's a safety thing, but sometimes I wish we just all would have big 4-wheel drives and pack it down.
866-594-4150. That's the number to call.
Hi, my name's Eric. I listen via the podcast. I recently purchased a 2016 Kia Soul. I'm just wondering what I can do to get a little more power out of this. Got the 2.0 liter in it. And so far I've put in a drop-in can and filter. Just wondering if I can get more power if I go with the cold air intake and maybe a catback exhaust. I'm not looking to void a warranty at all, but like a little more oomph, every guy would. The second question I have is, what do you think the possibilities are of vehicles coming out with no starters? I mean, we have direct injected engines and spark control. So what's the chances of having engines computer controlled as they are, where the cylinder stops already compressed? When you go to start the car, all it does is inject the fuel and inject the fuel and then spark, causing the car to start. Thank you very much.
Well, to make a Kia Soul go faster, you have to push it down a hill.
Need a bigger hamster.
Yeah, it was just something like that was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Not a car that you typically see the tuners go crazy after, but there are folks that do everything.
Turbocharged, supercharged. Problem is that's really the only way you're going to get any more power out of it, and you could have some warranty issues. I would.
Those
guess
other
you probably
modifications you mentioned might give you some minor feel difference. Maybe the noise would be different, but I just don't think you're going to see a modest power change that you would notice.
It's going to be hard for what you're looking to do. But as far as the cars starting without a starter, my Model T does that on a regular basis. When I turn it off and then I hop back in it, 20 minutes later, turn the key on, it buzzes the coil and it'll fire right up. It's normal for that to do it. Spark ignition, and they have looked at that on cars and researched it, and the computer just senses where the position of the engine is, hits the fuel, fires up. I don't think we're going to see it as a mainstay by any means anytime soon, but it is a definite possibility.
Hey, podcasters, the phone number to reach us is 866-594-4150. We record the show from 9 to 11 every Thursday morning Central Time. Or if you can't call us, maybe we can call you. Just email us your phone number and your question, and we would love to try and get in touch with you while we're recording the show every Thursday morning. Just go to the website, underthehoodshow.com, and click on the contact page. The Under the Hood Show podcast is brought to you by Berkeley Classics, a premier provider of collector vehicle insurance.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us Under the Hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
And I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by HollanderParts.com. For a quality auto parts recycler in your area, look to HollanderParts.com, the place to locate your parts. And by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Father's Day is June 19th. Are you ready? Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts, where you'll find gift cards and literally hundreds of great Father's Day gifts. From tools to air compressors to flashlights, O'Reilly Auto Parts has exactly what he wants at guaranteed low prices. O'Reilly Auto Parts, better prices every day. Let's talk about summer, and I have an impossible question for you. It is summertime, and I'm noticing auctions and things, and your sister has auctions coming up with classic cars.
Check out VanderbrinkAuctions.com. She's got quite the summer lineup coming up here.
What if I'm a novice, like I am, and I'm not kidding. I would like to get a car that what for an entry level, someone to get into an entry level. I know this is an impossible question to ask, but what kind of money are you talking about to get into a collector car situation?
What you're saying, Chris, is if I'm getting this right, because we talked about this before, you like that old stuff running around, but you're not going to fix it yourself,
right? And
you want to buy it, and it's just expected it's going to run and drive and everything's going to be fine, because you're not going to spend more than $400 or $500 on maybe it needs a battery and an oil change. Other than that, I know that's an impossible question to ask. And also, we've talked about it recently, my son and I, with getting cars and stuff. I would not be interested in something that you don't drive. I don't want to collect, and I don't mean this in a derogatory.
You want a driver.
I don't want an art piece. I don't want something that's so nice that I would ever be afraid to drive.
Shannon auctioned some recently. I think it was a year ago, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And those would be what I would consider a car you could buy at an auction. I mean, the one was a 79 Trans Am. You go to the auction, you look at it, and the owner says to the auctioneer, "This is a runner driver. I drive it every day. The air conditioning works. Here's what it is." And you hope that information is deemed reliable, or deemed accurate or whatever, but not,
You're going to want to probably find
disclosure.
First of all, my opinion, what's your brand preference? What do you like?
Right.
So if you like a Mustang, of course you might want a Carroll Shelby Mustang, but that's not what you're going to buy.
Right.
So you have to back yourself away from the highly desirable collector car, possibly, and you're going to have to go for, maybe it's the following year where it wasn't quite as sought after. You might have to go for a higher mileage unit that isn't, like I said, that work of art, a car that's been used more.
If you've always wanted a 57 Chevy, you might have to go for an 87 Chevy.
I thought of you when last week, actually last Friday, I thought of you. I drove by an old friend's house, and next door on the corner, there was a 66 Mustang sitting out there. On the window, it said $5,400. Runs and drives. It was a straight 6-cylinder car.
There you go.
It was a Mustang.
Okay. Didn't have the big motor in it.
It was not rusted.
Yeah.
It was complete. Had an under-the-dash AC unit that said not working, used to. But and it had a kind of old purplish red paint on it. It wasn't great. It was probably a cool 70s paint job. It's like, I remember that car. So those things are out there.
Yeah.
It's not going to be your fastback, boss engine-powered car, but hey.
I think the thing you're going to look for is and we've said this before, if you're not into auto body and you had to pay someone to start doing major auto body work, it gets very, very expensive to do it well. And so you'd want to stay away from rust.
Okay.
You'd want to stay away from collision damage in areas that would have to be structurally repaired versus just removed and replaced.
Okay.
You'd want to stay away from things that you can't easily manage yourself. If the engine's got a noise in it and it runs okay, you could drive it for a while until you had the budget to take the engine apart and repair the heads or whatever it might happen to be.
Okay.
So you're going to be looking for that car that somebody's just been driving, and you can drive it away from the auction, most likely, because you don't have the resources to do a project yourself. And if you brought it to as far as within your garage, you're not going to bring it in and tear it apart. And if you had to bring it to someone, unless you have a friend that you can exchange labor with, maybe you can do a bunch of things for him and he can do things for you. That goes on all the time. Hey, I'll pull the motor and I'll get it rebuilt for you, and you go work on my basement.
Right.
Those deals happen all the time. So whatever your resources are within the community that you circle yourself in could make a difference in the type of car that you buy.
Do those ever work out, those kind of arrangements? I would imagine that.
Typically, one of the people really gets the short end of the stick.
Yeah, he didn't tell me his basement leaked, but engine was a
I've
piece
heard
of
more
cake.
bad stories with trade-out deals, and I just suggested it, but they must work because people still try to do them every day.
Especially if it's like an in-law or something. That's the best way to do it. Find family
the hot rod engine that I was talking about at my friend's shop. He's putting that in for a trade-out for some remodeling on the house. They're like, well, we'll see how that works.
Yeah, I'll do some sheetrock work for you. You buy the sheetrock, you buy the tape, you buy the mud.
By winter.
I'll show up for 1 weekend. I'll show up for 1 weekend and do my work, and you work for 3 months on my vehicle. It sounds awesome.
Chris, please be careful, and listeners, please be careful. If you're going to buy a car, it may look good and seem to run good, but if any way possible, talk to the owner of that car and make sure you feel comfortable with what they're telling you, because if you see one and it says runs and drives, well, great, it runs and drives. Well, it could be a great runner and driver, or it could be runs and drives but needs every component in the suspension replaced, because although it runs and drives, it's really not safe to be used as a daily driver. The brakes may not be working really good, and it may be a car that's going to cost you $2,000 to $3,000 to go through the suspension on just to get it safe to drive.
The question to ask is, this runs and drives. Could I run and drive out of the parking lot, or can I run and drive this all summer?
Right.
Yeah. Right. And there are many of them that are able to do that, and it's a get what you pay for thing. If you see one Mustang and two of them side by side and they look identical and they both seem to run well, but one's priced at $5,900 and one's priced at $2,900, why?
Bring a mechanic with somebody that does physically work on cars, and somebody that has been around vehicles a good chunk of their life. Bring them with, let them inspect it so they can tell you, yep, I see this. Still drive it, but you need to fix that. I see this. Bring somebody with a trained eye with you. Don't go into something like that blind. Always do an inspection first. And, as you get into newer cars, you can start doing some of the title histories just to figure out where the car's been, some of its history. Doesn't work so well in the older cars because a lot of their history is buried and it'll never be found.
And two on that is they're looking for a 17-digit VIN number. And if you don't have a 17-digit VIN, they
don't
just
work in most
it won't
systems.
go in there. I've tried to put some older ones in. I was like, oh, can't get it in there.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us. We call it the Hoodie Hotline.
This is Dale. I listen to KRMS in Lake Ozark, Missouri. I have a question about HollanderParts.com. I've tried going to the website, and do I just put my question in and wait for a response, or is there a way I can view inventory and see what's available? Thank you. Great show.
Not a plant. One of our great sponsors, HollanderParts.com.
You can actually do just that. You can go to the HollanderParts.com website. You can use the link on our UnderTheHoodShow.com page. Click on it. It'll take you to the main page of HollanderParts.com, and then you select the type of car that you're looking for, select the type of part you're looking for, and it'll step you through it pretty easily. And once you get there, it's going to show vendors that have what you're looking for, and then you can click on that vendor, and most of the time you're going to see, not every single part, but most of them you're going to see the actual part you're looking for. If you get into some obscure stuff, like if you say, I'm looking for a sun visor for a 2005 Silverado, that's stuff that most auto recyclers aren't going to, they might not inventory it, and they might, if they inventory it, they're probably not going to take a picture of that one part. But now if it's an engine, or if it's a wheel, or it's a fender, or even a radio, things like that, most of that stuff's going to be listed with a picture.
You can see a picture, and you can buy it e-commerce on the site. And
you can choose, if you look and you see, let's say you see 100 recyclers across the country that have it, look at the one near you. Oh, there's one next to me. And you can click right on it.
Thanks for the call. 866-594-4150. Also, along the summer road trip line, someone did ask me the other day, they said, summer road trips, if we're going to do it, what do I need to check? What are the last things I need to do? Even if my car runs fine, I'm going out on the summer road trip. What are the things I need to have checked every time? Even if the car has run great for 2 months.
Avoid distractions. They can really take you off course.
Yeah.
The first thing you want to do is the basics. Do I have gas in the tank? How many times have you hopped in the car to go somewhere and it's like, yeah, going to Minneapolis this weekend? Wait a second. Why do I have 1/8 of a tank of gas? I planned on everything before this trip. I checked my oil. I made sure I had coolant in there, and I just looked for visible leaks on the driveway because, oh, wait a second, there's a new puddle under there. Maybe I should have that checked.
Here's something, too, that I don't know if a lot of people think about. If you're stopping for gas or something and you want to get, listen, we're stopping for gas. If you want something to drink, get it at the gas station. And if you have to go to the bathroom, do that now. And we're not going over there to get a milkshake at that place and then over here because the hamburgers are better. We're making one stop when we stop for gas, all right? Am I clear?
Dad,
have I made this clear?
Dad, stop. I think you just went into another.
Sorry, what?
Come back to the show. Come back to the show.
Can we go over there?
Okay, what now? I'm sorry.
So we're going through 3 drive-thrus before we leave town?
Yes.
You want to pick the exit with only one place, Chris. Last chance gas, and that's all we have. We've got a pop machine over there. Where's your convenience store? It's in the box on the porch.
That is funny, though. You did make it. You do. You get on the road and you go, oh, I have to go stop and get gas in 20 miles.
Take off on the road and they're like, yeah, I discovered this leak after I got going. Did you look at your driveway before you left? There's been a puddle there for a month, but I didn't pay any attention. Well, look.
But let's assume our car is sound.
Tires.
What are we? Tires. Okay.
Yeah.
Air pressure.
I walk around when I'm on a long trip and I'm filling with gas. I put the nozzle in the tank, and I just, I probably don't check the oil every time like I should. But, just last week, rental car, I put the nozzle in the tank, and I walked around. I got on my phone. I was talking to somebody, and I'm walking around, and I'm looking. Somebody's going to go, you shouldn't be on your phone while you're refilling your car. That's why I walked away from it. But I was walking around, and I was just kind of looking.
Breaking the law in
looking
some
down.
states.
Hey, look, my tires
You have to stay right where you're pumping. In some states, you broke a law.
Probably there, too. But looking there, hey, are my tires low? Did one go low? Yeah, it's supposed to have a tire monitor on there, but does it work? Who knows? I'm walking around. Yeah, all the tires are good.
Did you check the oil?
Bird stuck in the grill? No.
Okay.
When was the last time you were at a large convenience store, gas station, and you saw a car with the hood up with somebody checking the oil?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's been a while.
Usually if I see the hood up there checking on the steam rolling out of it.
Right.
Just think about that. And when we were younger, it was normal.
Absolutely. When's the last time you did any check of maintenance on a rental car?
Never.
I didn't open the hood of my rental car.
Yeah, you thought about it.
It wasn't that impressive.
Ask me when was the last time I've lifted the hood of a car at a gas station of my own.
When was the last time you lifted the hood?
7 years ago, possibly?
Yeah.
I did it last week.
I've put washer fluid in. I'll washer fluid. That's about it.
When I'm usually at the gas station, I'm trying to get in and out of there so fast because I got somewhere else to be. There's nothing getting opened up at the driver's door.
Here's my impression of Shannon at a gas station. Yeah, no, I'm going to call you when I'm on the road. I'm getting gas. Hold on a second. I'm going to go in. That's my impression.
Me.
And I'm holding. Good. If you could see my impression,
you're holding.
I'm
the cell
pumping
phone.
the gas with the. He has it in his shoulder over here, and he's doing this.
Yeah, something like that.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Bob. Bob, you're on the Under the Hood show.
Yes, got an 01 Chevy Blazer, and a couple of days ago we were driving home, and all of a sudden the thing started losing power. Got about 1,200 RPM, the best it could do. We got it to the shop, and they put the scanner on it, and they said the oxygen sensors needed to be changed, and then the mass flow air sensor was dirty, but we did all that, and it still does the same thing. About 1,200 RPM is all you can get out, and then it kind of backfires and sputters, and it'll catch a little bit, but still 1,200 is the best it will do.
First thing I thought of when you started describing that, my head all of a sudden went to, it sounds like his catalytic converter's starting to plug up, or he's losing fuel pressure. And then when you said, oxygen sensors, both of them, I thought, I bet it had some lean codes in it. And they're thinking, clean that mass airflow sensor because we've got some fueling issues, lean codes probably, all leading around that same thing. And I'm thinking, all that together, either we're running low on fuel pressure or we've got a catalytic converter plugging up. I mean, the next step for me, if I was diagnosing that type of thing, I'm going to pull those front oxygen sensors out and I'm going to put my pressure gauge on it and see what kind of back pressure is in there. And if I've got more than about a pound at a steady 2,000 RPM, I've got converters plugging up on that thing, and those are going to have to be
And this is a
changed.
Good example for our hoodies out there of reading a code, replacing the part, and not fixing the problem. And I'm not shaming you, Bob, because it happens a lot. Because people will go to XYZ, they'll get a code read, and many of these reports that come from parts stores will come along with a handy list of things that it potentially could be needed. And I do like that system, but I dislike the fact that there's no diagnosis really going on to fix the problem. It's just analyzing the system to tell you where the system code is coming from and the potential most common parts that are failing in those systems. It doesn't take, like Russ said, if this was running lean from fuel pressure being bad or low volume of fuel, you could change the burn rate so quickly that it could give you codes, and the problem is somewhere else, and the codes were results. So that's why the diagnostic routines are so important.
So another question on that. So in order to look like the thing had never been off since 01 on the oxygen sensor, so
you didn't hurt anything.
No, they can't be cleaned. They wear out. They're scheduled for about 100,000 miles. They're kind of like a spark plug. They're very similar, and at 100,000 miles, they are worn out. So most people don't change them; they just run. But what happens is your fuel economy starts changing because they can't respond quickly when they've built up that much carbon.
But it's rusted in there. What do you spray on there to loosen it up so it'll come out a little easier? Is there a trick to get it out?
Well, that's the no. We do hose them down with JB80, and sometimes we'll let them sit. If we can get one in the night before, we'll spray them down and let them sit overnight. When we come in the next morning, we start working on that right away. And if they won't come out, then we try some heat and try to get them out. But a lot of times they will not come out. So what we do is then we put the biggest pipe wrench we got on there and we just turn them and they come out.
Okay.
And when they come out, you can't put them back in because the threads are gone. So then at that point, what we do is they sell a little, they call it a bung, and it's just a threaded, looks like a giant washer that we drill a hole and weld it to the pipe, put the sensor in a similar location within, an inch of where the other one was, and then we weld up the hole that where the old one broke off. And that's how we fix it. It's faster to do that than try to change the pipe or do anything like that. You just weld up the old hole.
Then you put the wire back on it so don't burn it or whatever, and you weld it up there. Then right?
Well,
the heat won't hurt it, will it?
Well, no, the sensor's going to be junk. You take that out.
But I mean, when you put the new one on, you put the new washer on it, and you weld that to the pipe.
Yeah, it won't hurt the pipe.
It won't hurt the wire either going into it or whatever.
Well, there won't be any wire because
you'll have that off to the side.
You'll have that unplugged and moved to the side, and the sensor will be out of it. So you weld this washer to this bung welds right to the pipe, and then you just screw the sensor in like brand new sensor. Screw it in and plug it in.
There you go, Bob. Does that help you out?
Okay, you bet. Thanks.
Thanks very much for the call. Thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us on the Under the Hood Show. You can call that number 24 hours a day.
Hi, Jerry here, Rapid City, South Dakota. I listen on KOTA radio. Question about a 2003 Honda Hybrid Civic, 215,000 miles. The IMA light has been on for about 80,000 miles. And the car runs okay, but at about 1,000 miles ago, it shut down. Going down the interstate, the air conditioner went off, lights flashed, the radio went off, lost power, pulled over, the engine sat, rested for about 10 minutes, and then started again, and has run okay since then for about an additional 1,000 miles approximately. So the question is, one, will the vehicle continue to run, or will the hybrid battery gradually shut down totally? Two, is there any relationship between the regular car battery and the hybrid battery? And three, what is the reliability prognosis for continued service from the vehicle? So if you could let us know that, we'd appreciate it, and go from there. Thank you.
I'm interested in this because he's had this light on for 80,000 miles, and that sounds like something I would do, so let's discuss. Go ahead.
IMA, Integrated Motor Assist, hybrid car, they are all closely related. The 12-volt vehicle battery, the high-voltage battery, everything's charging together, electric, air conditioning compressors. All these things are relying on that battery. When they designed it, they designed that battery to be in good shape and operate, and the battery's only good for so long. After 10 years, you're pushing it. It's a battery. It's getting old, and once that system says, the computer's looking at it and saying, hey, this battery is toast. We can't charge it well anymore. This thing is getting hot. We're having issues here. We're monitoring that battery. There's a problem. There's an issue. So it's turned the light on. As the issue's gotten worse, things start shutting down and the car dies. And at some point, it's not going to start. It's not going to run, and it's going to let you know it. It's just going to turn itself off, and it's going to be done. So, yeah, you've gotten a ton of miles out of it. You've gotten a lot of time out of it. You could probably keep it going. You could try to find if a new battery might be $1,000 to $1,500, even if you get an aftermarket design battery. Factory one even more, but you might be able to find a used one. But the problem is that it only fits so many years, and now even the used ones are getting way out of date. So you give it a shot, look around, but yeah, it's going to be hard to find anything but a new battery for that.
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics. The Under the Hood Show can be heard each week on great stations across the country and at underthehoodshow.com. And check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/underthehoodshow.
This Tire Maintenance Minute is brought to you by General Tire and the Grabber HTS 60, the perfect synergy of comfort, durability, and performance for light trucks, SUVs, and crossovers.
Egyptian hieroglyphics couldn't be any more alien than the strange array of letters and numbers on the sides of your tires. Just what does, for example, P185/75 R14 mean? Well, P stands for passenger vehicle. 185 is the tire width in millimeters, 75 is the tire's height-to-width ratio, and R14 is the diameter of the wheel, 14 inches. There, tire babble solved. The Grabber HTS 60 features General Tire's StabiliTread, offering a flatter footprint, optimized tread pattern stiffness, and an improved tread compound. The result is up to 25% more tread life than the original Grabber HTS. General Tire's innovative DuraGen technology provides a robust compound with excellent resistance to cuts and chips. Ultra high-strength steel belts and a broad, flat contour promote stability, even wear, and responsive handling.
Learn more at GeneralTire.com. That's GeneralTire.com.
O'Reilly. If it's hard to stop or you hear squealing and grinding noises during braking, stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts. You'll find the brake parts you need from trusted brands like Brake Best Select, and Wagner Thermo-Quiet at everyday low prices. Play it safe with brake parts from O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
You know, we'd come to your house if we could. This is Under the Hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. We're glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us Under the Hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter, here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Berkeley Classics, a premier provider of collector vehicle insurance, committed to helping you understand the risks to your collector vehicle, both on and off the road, so you're better prepared to protect it. Berkeley Classics, your key to collector vehicle insurance. And don't forget to join us on Facebook. You can win a hoodie if you're a member of the Hoodie Fan Club and you like the Facebook page, like this hour's winner.
And as promised, our second winner of the show is Mary DeVries, who listens to us on KID Radio in Pocatello, Idaho. Congratulations from our good friends over at HollanderParts.com for providing the hoodies.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Cheryl. Cheryl, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
I have a question about tire pressure. I went and got a set of tires for my Buick out at a well-known tire place by you guys, and they filled them to about 40 PSI. Then I went and had my oil changed, and they dropped it down to about 33. So what is the better tire pressure to use?
On the door of most vehicles, there is a sticker that is the factory's recommendation for tire inflation to do not go below that number. And I would guess that it's probably lower than either one of those in most cases, but not always. They update that if there has been a recall due to tires. Very few of them have that. Most of them are accurate. But if you go back, way back to the Explorer incidents where they had some tires exploding because they were run too low and it was causing too much heat buildup and blowing the sidewalls out of these tires and had some people killed over it, they had an update. But for the most part, you will see a sticker in that door. That little placard will say front 33, rear 38, whatever it is. That's a do not go below. And what they did is the manufacturer said, if we put this tire size on this car, what inflation do we need to prevent the tire from getting hot because of the weight of the car, the handling, the performance, all those things. And they put that on the side. Now, if you look at a tire, you could have 20 different tires, different brands, and on that tire, it will say maximum inflation pressure. And on most light car tires, it's going to say something like, the higher quality tires, it may say maximum inflation 44 pounds. That's a real common number, like in a 225, 60, 16. It might say 44 PSI. That's the do not exceed number.
Okay.
And you could run it up to that. You don't want to go higher than that because then you got a too high a pressure. If you run it lower than what the car says, then you're underinflated. There's a happy medium in between, and if you've got a high load in the car, if you're running around with 4 passengers and a trunk full of stuff, you're headed to a
bowling
hockey
tournament
game or bowling. Yeah, like Chris, you're going to a bowling tournament, and you've got 5 passengers in your car, and you've got 5 bowling balls in the trunk, plus a bunch of other gear, or whatever. Maybe you've got a birthday cake back there, and
keg.
Yeah, who knows?
Right.
Keg of root beer. It's going to get. Yeah, it's going to get heavy, so you're at the maximum. You may not want that minimum number on there. You may want to go a little higher if your tires are low, because the low tire is going to have the sidewall is going to flex and build up heat.
The contentious point on the Ford deal way back in the day is that the supposed, in their litigation, is that the dealers were, through the Ford direction, putting less air pressure in the Ford Explorer tires to give a better ride because they thought people were complaining they were riding too rough. They forgot they bought a four-wheel drive sport utility. And so with that, and Firestone said they didn't follow the recommendation on our tire. And so that was kind of the contentious point in the litigation. And so you have to watch now. I would say a more direct answer on the question in regards to what you should do is you have to watch, like Russ said, the conditions of what you're doing. But you can actually cause problems with tire wear if you don't have the inflation proper. If you get too much air in a tire, it'll start crowning the center of the tire, and you'll start getting uneven wear. Like Russ said, if you get too low of air in the tire, you can start getting the sidewalls will heat up, and you'll start wearing and possibly cause damage. So I think what Russ just told you is exactly what you need to do is you need to look at that sticker on the door jamb, and I would follow that and check it seasonally because it will change from time to time. I'm guessing they probably use the nitrogen probably on the fill at the tire store, and that's not going to moderate.
Yeah, I didn't because I didn't know about I didn't know if you could refill, if you were low, if you could put air in there.
Sure.
So I just went with the air.
Yeah, that's a good question on the nitrogen. You can, if you use it, you can put anything else in there you want or nitrogen. The thing is, though, when they put the nitrogen in, it's going to pull all the air that's in the tire out and then refill them to the correct. A lot of the machines are automatic. They'll pull them down, then they'll fill them with nitrogen. It's just a more stable gas. It's not going to be affected. If you put 40 pounds of air in the tire and then drove on a highway trip, your air pressure is going to stay pretty consistent around that 40 PSI range. That's why they use it for race cars that get really hot with a lot of friction on those tires and sidewall moving and things. If you have regular, just plain old air in the tires, you may see an increase of 3 to 4 pounds on a really hot day. You start off in the morning when it's 65 degrees. You take off on a road trip. It's 90 by the end of the day, and you've been on the highway for a long time. Maybe you've been at 90 degrees on 90 all day for 90 minutes. Who knows? It's going to get hot, and the pressure will go up, and that changes the wear in the tire. It'll make it actually overinflated. You don't want to let the air pressure out once it gets that way.
Wait, we've seen tires 10 pounds low in the wintertime that people haven't checked.
Yeah, and that helps using the nitrogen for that, but it's not a must, but it definitely is.
But once you start using standard air where nitrogen was, then you
go back to the same.
Then you've polluted the nitrogen, and you're kind of back to the same deal.
Okay. See, yeah, when I was driving it, it was getting to like a pound over what the maximum said on the tire. That's why I started noticing. I was worried about it.
Yeah. So. You want to follow that vehicle's manufacturer's rating for that, unless the manufacturer issues a change in that, and you can always contact your dealership and find out, talk to the parts department typically, and they'll be able to look and say, oh yeah, or the service department. They'll see if there was something changed on that.
Cheryl, thanks very much for the call. Good question. And our last point there, if you find your tires going over the maximum on the tire, that's very bad, right?
Well, to a point, because if the door says 35 pounds and you inflate those tires to 35 and you drive the car and you find that they go up to 40 pounds when you check them at the gas station, nobody does that, right, Chris? But if you did and you saw that they were 40, you don't want to let the air pressure out.
Right.
That's going to go down. That's what they recommended. They've tested it. They know that it's going to go up. But now if you find that you say, well, I'm going to put more in it. It says 35 in the door, but I'm going to put 40 in there. And then you drive the car and all of a sudden you've got 52 pounds in there on a super hot day. You've exceeded that sidewall that says 44. And you'll see that a lot of cars will say maximum inflation 44 PSI. The door says 28 to 33, whatever it is. They've got that. They've got all that figured out in there, and it tends to work really well when it's all followed the way the manufacturer asks to do it.
Let's go here and talk to Dave. Dave, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hey, guys, I got a 2008 Chevy Impala, 128,000 miles on it, and transmission issue. We've noticed it mainly we drove from Sioux Falls to Brookings the other day, and we, 70-75, got off on an exit, came up to a stop sign, and had to sit and wait for a few cars to go by. And then when you put the gas on to get going again, it felt like it had to jump into gear, like it had gone onto gear, or the torque converter had disengaged. And we've had that happen, a couple of times a month. Again, mainly when it seems like the car's been really warmed up, and when you've had to sit for a prolonged time, like at a stop sign or a stoplight. Why would you get that jump? Like it feels has to jump back into gear.
It's wearing out. Yeah. I've got that same problem in mine, and it's been doing it for 2 years now, and I just keep driving it. I've learned about when it's going to do it. Like you said, you kind of know about the time it might do it. When I come up to that stop sign and I've been driving it a certain amount of time, it's just kind of like built into my head. I kind of got an idea. Oh, it's probably going to do it right here. And I
like the hunch you have that your grill tank's going to run out about the middle of your cheeseburgers.
There you go. You don't quite get that melt you want. You give it. I give a little gas and I say, "Oh, hey, it did it." But I don't take off normally because I'm afraid that if I do, it's just going to die one of these days. So I just give a little gas and I start to go, and then, hey, we're good. But if it slips, I let off the throttle there until it's into the gear, and then I go. And what's happening is the pressure is bleeding off in there. The clutches can't hold it anymore, and I've noticed the fluid's getting a lot darker than it should, and I could change it, but I've decided not to because I'm afraid that I changed it once and it's still getting dark again, which means I'm burning some clutches. And that's causing an issue. I wouldn't rule it out completely yet as being bad. You can have some diagnosis done. They can check for codes in there.
Make sure there's not a solenoid that's open or leaving a leakage in there.
But if they were to scan it like you were to scan mine, and you were to come up with this, we call it the death code. It says maximum adapt, long shift. It's done. I know what that means is that the transmission computer now has reached. It can adapt no longer. We have reached the maximum adaptation to try to get this thing to not slip. We've turned the pressure up as high as we can and shortened those shifts down, and it's as far as it'll go, and we're still sensing a slip, which means it's toast. It's on its way out. Doesn't mean it's done, but it means it's to the point where it's seeing that there's
You're going to be getting a new one someday.
Or not. I'm hoping to squeak it by couple more years.
Do you get a light on?
Occasionally.
I do not get any check engine lights, no.
I do. I thought he was asking.
Yeah, it was either one of you, I guess.
Yeah, occasionally, but not very often. It's once every 4 or 5 months it might come on if I've let it slip like that. But if you get the light and that, you're having it.
Well, and if you did have a light on, then there's other things too that could lead us to. There's something going on with the speed sensor. Is there something going? But most likely it's a problem internally in the transmission. I hate to even say that, but it most likely is.
Scan it. That's the first thing you can do is just get the.
Before you worry about it too much, let somebody perform some diagnostics on it.
Dave, thanks very much for the call. And then is it one of those where he can baby it and try and keep? Well, you've been going for 2 years.
I'm going. Look at you on that Windstar. You just kept driving that thing. I'm all about saving money. If you can save some money, why spend it?
Mike, you're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Question. I've got an 06 Dodge with the 5.9 diesel, 115,000. Looking to possibly relocate to Colorado. And you were talking about the ships and the pollution before. Do you know, or where would I find out what pollution controls or issues might I have to worry about in Colorado that we obviously don't worry about in South Dakota?
Because of inspections and things.
Yes.
Well, on that, if all your factory emissions equipment is still on the vehicle, they haven't done a bypass and taken the exhaust off. If you've got a vehicle,
off.
What's that?
It's been taken off. I bought it used about 6 years ago. It was a lease car, and the exhaust has been changed, and they put an air box on it.
All right, then get out your wallet if you're going to take that thing to Colorado. You might be better off just selling it here before you go.
Really?
The good thing is it's an 06, and you don't have 3 units underneath that you have to replace. You've only got 2.
You would have to put the factory emissions equipment back on the vehicle and have it pass emissions by way of the check engine light being off. I mean, they'll give you a list. If you get onto the state's website, you'll see what is required to be on there. But it won't fly with a bypass. I know we just had this conversation in Texas just a week ago today about vehicles passing inspection or not, and the year, and I believe they said it was 1985 and newer, had to have catalytic converters, and that hasn't changed in a number of years. And they were talking about trucks, and if you had one that came into the inspection station, they looked underneath it, and it was supposed to be a a DPFE truck and it did not have that particulate filter on it, or if it was missing a catalytic converter, or even without muffler, they all have to have a muffling exhaust noise reducing device. And it used to be the turbo was good enough for that, but since people said, well, I can defeat that now and take the noise ring out of the turbo, they said, no, we're just going to write it in there on inspections. You have to have a muffler in the system, even though they weren't that loud. No, got to do it. So otherwise you don't get an inspection. If you don't take your inspection with you and have it registered online, you can't get a registration for the car because now they don't have stickers. They're in the window for registration. Colorado's got some similar things, and they're more restrictive with their pollution. So Colorado, California, Michigan, New York, you're going to have some of that done. So I guess the easiest way is going to be to get on to the Colorado State website and look at the inspections and see what they're requiring for your particular year. You may be lucky and get away with certain things that you can't on a newer one. But if you find it says you need this, X equipment on there to pass, look and see which is going to be more costly to you. Selling the truck and getting a different truck before you go that has the equipment on it. Because somebody around here in your area, they might say, oh, I'd love to have one of those trucks. It's already got that stuff done to it. I'm going to buy it. And your loss dollar-wise may not be too bad or may even come out even. But if you go there and try to put this equipment on before you come into the state with it, it could cost a whole lot.
Okay.
Does that help you out there, Mike?
Yeah, it's not what I wanted to hear, but thank you very much, Dylan.
Thanks very much for the call. And in some places, too, I don't know if it's all states or what states, but some are...
Some have emissions inspections,
by area.
Some
don't. And by
some,
county. Some counties or metro areas have them.
Metro areas may say, and if you're going to be here, you got to do this. 100%.
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics. The Under the Hood Show can be heard each week on great stations across the country and at underthehoodshow.com.
Does your car suffer from rough idling and stalling? Does it hesitate when you take off from the traffic light? If it does, it could be due to dirty fuel injectors. Clean your car's fuel injection system with Justice Brothers Fuel Injection System Cleaner. It cleans the important parts of your fuel system and helps to restore normal operation. And it's guaranteed to satisfy or your money back. Available wherever fine automotive products are sold. Tell them Ed Justice Jr. sent you.
Do you pamper your collector vehicle and want to protect it at every turn? Berkley Classics, a premier provider of collector vehicle insurance, shares your concern to keep your most prized possession safe. Your vehicle is prime real estate for rodents seeking shelter. Chewed up wiring can lead to costly repairs. Keep these pest tips from Berkley Classics in mind to help avoid common mishaps and keep your vehicle in tip-top shape. Clean your vehicle thoroughly and remove all remnants of food from in and around the vehicle. Avoid parking under trees, around tall grass, compost, or wood piles. Use an ultrasonic repeller, traps, or peppermint oil to keep critters away. Cover the tailpipe and air intake. Berkley Classics is committed to helping you understand the risks and know how to guard against them. Products and services are provided by one or more insurance company subsidiaries of W.R. Berkley Corporation. Berkley Classics understands that classic vehicles represent our dreams. They fill our greatest memories, but most of all, they tell a story. And when protected by the right team of people, they'll allow your story to live on for generations. Let Berkley Classics keep your passion alive. Berkley Classics, your key to collector vehicle insurance. If you'd like to advertise on the Under the Hood Show, go to our website, underthehoodshow.com, and click on the contact page. You can reach a dedicated, loyal audience every week by partnering with the Under the Hood Show.
Welcome back to Under the Hood with the Motor Medics.
Hey, we'd like to invite you to join our Facebook page, facebook.com/Under the Hood Show. There you can send email questions to myself and Shannon. You can also join in the conversation, talk about your vehicles with other car lovers, post your pictures of your favorite ride. We'd love to see you there at facebook.com/Under the Hood Show.
Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. We're glad to have you with us. The phone number to reach us is 866-594-4150. Russ Evans and Shannon Nordstrom are here to answer your questions. I'm here to answer your calls. I'm Chris Carter. 866-594-4150. We call it the Hoodie Hotline.
Hi, my name is Brian. I'm from Toledo, Ohio. I work for the Air National Guard. I've been in the military now for 11 years. This is nothing related to the military. It's actually me trying to help out my father-in-law. He has a 2012, I believe. Chevy Silverado 1500 5.3 Vortex. My question is, I've been kind of doing this diagnostics in passing, so I haven't had a good chance to tear into it. But I do listen to you guys all the time. It's actually tremendous help, and I really appreciate the opportunity to hear you guys on the podcast. It's really helped me out, and I'm passing it along to my fellow mechanics too. So I just want to add that. Anyways, the code that's coming up is the P0301, the multiple misfires or random misfires. My question is, what can cause that? And here's what I've come up with, and here's what I've done in passing. I've changed the coil packs around. I've tried, the injector cleaner that you put to the gas. I know that's not very potent. I've also called a few GM dealerships to see if they've had, the same issue. And it only does it at idle, is the other thing. So I hooked it up to a scanner, a snap-on scanner, and when I was driving it, there was no misfires during normal driving operations. So, and I do appreciate you guys helping everybody out there, because it is actually a huge help, and it benefits myself and some other mechanics that I know quite a bit. So, again, much appreciated, and take care.
Thanks very much for the call. That's a cool call. The random misfire, it's not working code.
It can go down the road and feel pretty good, and you don't notice it, but the computer's saying, we got a random misfire.
It's not working. That's what the code should be. It's not working.
Code should be good luck.
Yeah. Expressed to the mechanics especially. But it can be an awful thing for mechanics when you can't feel it. It seems that it's running perfectly smoothly at idle, but you see that code and you go, yeah, it's running fine. What's going on? Well, then you got to pull out the big guns and start diagnosing it.
Do you mean Russ? Do you mean the big guns, Russ? Get Russ involved?
There you go. So the first thing I would do if one of our guys was looking at this thing, I'd say, all right, we do have a misfire. It's random. The computer sees it at idle, and we've already looked at codes, see if there's any other codes in there.
By random misfire, does it literally mean that it's misfiring on various cylinders, right, just at no specific time?
Well, you've got a V8 engine, and it may be just misfiring on one cylinder randomly.
Okay.
It's missing now. Now it's not. Now it's missing again. Now it's not. Or it could be on multiple, multiple cylinder random misfires.
One is missing, three is missing, two is,
right.
And they're still attached to the engine, but they're just not working. So what we would do is we would look, are there any other codes that could affect this? Lean codes? That would be bad. Rich codes? That'd be bad too. Do we have anything like that going on? Stuff we need to address first. And if we don't, then I'm going to check things like, is the crankshaft variation learn on this GM product, has that been performed so that the cam and crank are in sync and everything's working good? And if it has, then I'm going to start doing a little bigger diagnosis. If it's idle only, I'm probably going to pull the plugs out and do a leak down test and see, do my cylinders all have the ability to hold that pressure like they should? And if I see that, I've got a random misfire on 1, 3, and 2.
Does it tell me that when I get deep in?
Oh, a lot of times they will. So if I see that I've got those, if I'm looking at the data and it's sitting there idling and it's warmed up and I see, okay, I'm missing on 1, 3, and 2. Well, let's look at that. And now I look at my leak down and I see, oh, wow, I've got 35% leakage on those cylinders and the rest of them are, 5%. Okay, where's it leaking? Is it past an intake or an exhaust valve? Well, there's my problem. There's, at least part of it. But now, was that caused by an injector that was stuck and caused those valves to burn? I'm going to have to first fix the problem and then find out what caused the problem, if there is a cause of it that's still showing. Injectors can do that. They can be clogged. And cleaning them, that can help. A professional cleaning can do it too and help. It may need a whole injector. But also, switching those coils around may not locate the issue, because if you've got multiple coils that are failing or plug wires or plugs that are failing, if it's just one, it's great. You switch it around with something else, and if it goes away or follows it, you've identified it. But if it doesn't, it still could be a multiple issue where you need plugs and wires and maybe some coils on there too. But after all you've done, I would say I'm looking for that. I'm going to do a leak down and just see what the general mechanical condition of the engine is.
Got good health at the baseline.
Yeah. And thank you very much for your service to our country here in the United States of America. We really appreciate that. So I know you said it's not about that, but it really is, because we wouldn't be free to do the Under the Hood show and help people out if it wasn't for men and women like you taking care of us. So thank you.
And can you get us a ride in one of your planes? As long as we're on the subject, right? We might as well throw that in. The random misfire, that is something that you can chase for years. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Because when I had it on a car 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and it would just pop up and then go away.
I remember Roger's little S10 crew cab. My father-in-law had one that just drove us crazy, too.
Check engine light would come on. It was a random misfire. We reset it because we didn't, and then it would run for 3-4 months, and then it would pop up again.
It just wouldn't do it for us.
I guess that's why they call it random.
That's going to do it for another episode of the Under the Hood Show. Until next time, you can find us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/underthehoodshow. And don't forget to check out underthehoodshow.com. Become a Hoodie fan club member. And you can call the Hoodie hotline 24 hours a day, 866-594-4150. For Russ Evans, Shannon Nordstrom, I'm Chris Carter. Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Under the Hood Show.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Find out more by visiting underthehoodshow.com. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc.